One percenters, welcome back to 1424 basketball training, where the goal is to take 14 minutes, 24 seconds, or 1% of your day to get better. In today's video, Greatest Peaks, episode 9, Shaquille O'Neal.
In the last two episodes, we've seen two-way big men dominate in the golden era of centers. But the last Goliath of that era was the biggest, Shaquille O'Neal. O'Neal was, quite simply, the most physically overpowering athlete in the history of basketball.
Shaq Diesel.
He was more nimble than players he outweighed by 100 pounds. And at his apex, there was far more to his game than just bullying people under the rim. But what were those other pieces? And were they enough to make him the best offensive big man ever?
The best offensive big man ever.
One question. Who was the best at court impact?
Him or Wilt? The Shaq attack.
Shaq was already a 300-plus pound physical marvel.
Shaq's personality is bigger than his body, man. Shaq is the most loved guy ever.
Was the benchmark for power on the court, but Shaq took things to a new level. After his rookie season, they actually needed to Shaq-proof the baskets, and by his peak years in Los Angeles, he tipped the scales at around 340 pounds.
340?
We rarely think of off-ball movement like this, but O'Neal created advantages by working for an extra 3 or 4 feet that made all the difference. With the ball on the wing, Shaq flashes to the post, but it's doubled. So
the lost art of working off the ball and without the ball, and then the super lost art of post position.
Moving it to the top creates an easier entry. And notice O'Neal sit down and drive backward.
There's a center on, I think, Purdue. Super huge guy that might be very, very valuable. I forget his name. He's like 7'4".
At an angle to get deeper.
Plays in the post.
Position here, only Reggie Miller sags to prevent a pass to Shaq. But O'Neal sneaks a step or two closer to the goal, and so when it's swung to the corner, Shaq again seals himself deeper to set up a dunk. This was decidedly different than Wilt, who often parked himself in a spot and waited in a fairly upright position for an entry. Right here, he could seal Bill Russell under the rim, but in general, he wasn't looking for positional advantages like this. And while some of this is specific to an era with less bully ball in general, it's also a difference in philosophy. When Shaquille moved across the lane, he was trying to get closer to the rim. Wilt would move more toward the ball. He doesn't duck in front of his man, but instead flashes to a spot like a finesse player.
Is it? I mean, the biggest difference between Shaq and Wilt, it looks like so far, and talks about in terms of post, it's not a difference in philosophy.
When Shaquille moved across the lane, he was trying to get closer to the rim. In general, it's also a difference in philosophy. When Shaquille moved across the lane,
It's not a difference in philosophy. It's 100% a difference in mentality. And the biggest difference between a dominant player and any other player is a mentality. Alpha is a mentality. That's why Kobe and Shaq butted heads relentlessly. Shaq is by far the most dominant player. Was he the greatest offensive scorer? Now that I think about it a little bit more, yes.
Trying to get closer to the rim.
But it's a dominant mentality that is psychologically, socially taken out of today's game. When I get pissed at Giannis, he's starting to figure out that he's the most dominant player because he asserts himself. Joel Embiid can assert himself, but Joel Embiid, he jokes around too much. So that aura of the alpha mentality of I'm dominating you, it's gone. Kobe had that thing. Jordan had that thing, and they weren't physically the best, but Shaq was physically the best with that dominant mentality. Yeah.
Wilt would move more toward the ball. He doesn't duck in front of his man, but instead flashes to a spot like a finesse player. Take ball reversals, for example. This is okay position, but changing sides allows Shaq to get a quarter step and then chisel out a much deeper catch, and that's unstoppable. To prevent O'Neal from getting that step, savvier defenders took away his cut, but then reversing sides opened a new door because he was such a massive target. These counters are similar to perimeter players cutting back for off an overplay, only Shaq's counters were about grappling for position in the paint, and he's sprightly enough to make catches like this. If teams tried to overplay the baseline, he could spin out the other side for the lob. Remember, his defender is worried about Shaq getting inside that low leg to the baseline, where it's game over if he seals him off. Yet, O'Neal's quick enough to punish that overplay in an instant with those light tap dancing feet. This is some basketball.
Post is jujitsu. Where's the person leaning? Where's their leverage? Understand how to spin, how to drop step, when to use your weight, when to be light. Shaq had great feet.
Feeling more weight on his right leg and then rolling off to go time up the lob. This explosive lateral athleticism is often overlooked in Shaq. Moving quickly at oblique angles was the basis of his power game. He would drive through his victims from the hips to overpower them with it.
Malik Rose had zero chance. And the only way Shaq was stoppable, semi-stoppable, is because refs are human and they're biased in nature. It happens all the time. I argue with refs. We talk about it before games, after games, and there's just a natural bias. If you're bigger, and there's an unwritten rule, you can't dominate in basketball like you dominate in football. You cannot pancake somebody. It comes up all the time. Basketball is just different, and in the reason it's allowed or not allowed in basketball, it's because of the referees.
Angles. Wilt didn't have that same low base explosiveness to spin or pirouette quite like O'Neal. His footwork was stiffer and he lacked the handle to set up these moves, whereas Shaq's agility combined with his weight carved out so many of his easy buckets. Shaq unleashed violence from the floor with his trunk and massive lower body. Wilt has said he was sensitive to being seen as a mere brute at the time, but Shaq leaned into this power as a way to...
Wilt said he's sensitive to being a brute. That just goes to exactly what I just said. It's a mentality, not a physical. Like, you got to be an alpha. If you're an alpha, you're an alpha. And if you combine that with physical dominance, you're Shaq.
Chamberlain was strong enough to have this effect too, moving players with his lower body, but it wasn't the norm for him like it was Shaq, who bullied players onto their heels like a basketball Yokozuna, turning 260-pound Tim Duncan into a piñata to set up this drop step. O'Neal had some finesse too. He's setting up the drop step, but Dikembe Mutombo stays square with him, so Shaq switches to the fade. This was a go-to move for him for years, often spinning to the baseline like this, and because of his 7.5-foot wingspan and jumping ability, he could fire this over giant defenders like Arvydas Sabonis. He also had surprising range on this shot, not quite to the foul line, we'll get to that in a minute, but out to about 12 or 13 feet. While he liked the drop step or that little turnaround to his right, he also had a jump hook over the other shoulder. He's denied here on his cut across the lane, which triggers that ball reversal, but Dale Davis stays with him well, and Shaq just falls back on a huge jump hook, which triggers that.
Look at some of Shaq's footwork, which tells you he has all the jumps. That's a one hop.
Well, he likes the drop step, or that.
And then here's a left-right plant.
Jump hook over the other shoulder. He's denied here on his cut across the lane, which triggers that ball reversal. But Dale Davis stays with him well, and Shaq just falls.
That's a hop. So this is footwork on the catch. So ball in the air. Okay, feet in there. So he's fighting for position, but as soon as he gets the ball, he repositions his feet. And then he's in a hop or a quick drop. So it's an elastic type jump.
Shaq just falls back.
It's the lost art of catching in the post. Yeah. So many players, when they catch it, they're stuck, cemented. Their feet are cemented on the floor. You fight for all the position prior, and at the last second, you can change your feet. It's just like pivoting on a catch on the perimeter.
It certainly was no sky hook.
See, this is when he's more stationary.
Shaq thought that shot was unbelievable. But it was hard to defend given his size and speed.
Right here, he catches and turns. This is super duper underrated.
Shaq thought that shot was uncool.
Okay, that one is the heavy one. Let me try to move this frame by frame. So you guys see it. Oh my God, I'm so slow with this. So here, that's the position as he catches. He readjusts his feet on the catch. So now that's a quick hop, and Matt Geiger, whoever's guarding him, has no chance.
Off the floor.
So
Shaq thought that shot was uncool, but it was hard to defend given his
here, Matt Geiger is putting all his weight onto Shaq. Okay, Shaq uses that weight against him. Matt Geiger stuck to the floor. Shaq's already jumping up, and Geiger doesn't even have a chance to jump up. I say it all the time for perimeter guys. If you have the ability to catch the ball, that means you have the ability to shoot the ball. You're open on the catch.
Floor.
Players just don't realize this, and they don't have the timing and the precision with their feet, or the nimbleness of their feet.
Between his hooks, powerful spins, and fadeaways, Shaq was an all-time great playoff scorer. At his peak, he posted some of the best adjusted numbers in league history, trailing only Michael Jordan in number of stretches at this volume, and doing so on similar efficiency. I do think Shaq added a different dimension with his off-ball game. He racked up nearly 750 makes from close range in his MVP season, an outlier since those records have been capped back to 1997, and about 2/3 of those shots were assisted by teammates, which lands him between the 75th and 80th percent.
Imagine if Shaq played on the Golden State Warriors, how fast they move the ball around, how quickly they share, how much movement there is around. Shaq would get lobs literally every play, or pick and rolls, dimes every single play. So moving off the ball is very reliant on how well your passes are. If you're playing with Kobe, he's trying not to pass every single time. Derek Fisher, Brian Shaw, they'll pass to Shaq, but they're not super great passers or playmakers. They're just kind of like ball movers. They sit to a spot, triangle offense. If they have low post, give it to them. If they front, throw it to the high post and throw a lob to Shaq.
During the Lakers three-peat, Shaq didn't even attempt a shot outside of 15 feet in the playoffs, and nearly half of his shots came right at the rim. So he lived off a diet of the highest.
Dang, never shooting outside of the paint.
Attempts in the sport. He added even more value without the ball as an offensive rebounder. His low post positioning battles organically segued into offensive rebounding position. Here comes that cut across the lane. It's jammed nicely, but Jackson lingers to double Shaq. So now Sam Perkins has to help off him, and the bull is loose in the China shop.
I'm 6'1". At my heaviest, when I played a lot, I was 6'1", 195. I used to play some center in some men's leagues, and I literally remember guarding 6'4", 6'6" guys that were 250 pounds, and literally I couldn't move the whole next day. And I probably averaged like 2 points and 2 rebounds. Our team would win. We had a 6'4" guy in our team, and he was a center, but I was the strongest guy because the 6'4" guy wouldn't guard. And the amount of toll guarding a dude that is 50 pounds heavier than you on every possession, trying to post you up, trying to beat you up, is insane. So guys that had to guard Shaq, oh my God, I feel for these guys. And just that stuff, people don't realize how much pressure is on somebody when you have to really just battle them all game long.
Some of his prowess on the glass was just wedging himself near the hoop and out jumping people. His 7'7" wingspan helped here, and so did his incredible.
It's like you can't teach height, and then there's weight, man. 50 pounds is a huge difference. 100 pounds, gigantic. Even 20 pounds is major. And Shaq would be, 20, 50, 100 pounds heavier than guys. It's insane.
Springiness for someone that size, and he cleans up this mess with the sledgehammer.
Oh my God.
Again, check out his feet on this play and how his twinkle toes let him reset into a bunny hop multiple times. It was almost unplay.
You can tell how much stronger Shaq is just by how he's standing here and how low the other guy is. The other guy is basically in the strongest position of a squad, and Shaq's barely pushing with one leg, his outer leg here.
Let him reset into a bunny hop multiple times. It was almost unfair to be so nimble at that size, and boxing him out was unenviable, and the Shaq-proof basket works. Teams tried all kinds of tactics.
This is just waiting. So the biggest knock on Shaq that I will always give to Shaq is he's lazy. And part of it is a function of just being the dominant dude every single time. Right here, he's just waiting for Kobe to jack it up. And at the last second, he just shoves this dude off. Like, what are you going to do with that monster, dude?
And the Shaq-proof basket works.
Oh, my God.
Teams tried all kinds of tactics. In the 2000 Western Finals, Portland went with the tag team holding method, but even those kinds of tricks weren't foolproof.
He's so strong, bro.
That Blazer team was really the only defense to slow down O'Neal during the three-peat years, swarming him regularly behind the giant Arvydas Sabonis, who was about 7'3" and 300.
Every time they're going to hack him.
Sabonis had the mass to keep Shaq from completely overpowering him, and the basketball IQ to overplay that baseline move he loved. He also tried to deny Shaq's cut across the lane, making him catch it 3 or 4 feet farther out, and that makes a difference versus the Diesel. A more realistic way to slow Shaq down was to foul him.
The best way to get a guy in the post, a post entry, is him on the move. So the problems with post entry in the triangle is when they slowed it down too much and they just park Shaq there, like here.
And that makes a difference.
How many times you got a pump fake here? We understand everything that's going on. He's going to come across. He's going to post up Arvydas Sabonis, Glenn Rice, sweep. Right? There's no precision. There's no timing. You got to catch Shaq on the move. Sabonis has no chance. Anybody moving with Shaq has no chance. So this is when they can get in trouble. This is when you could quadruple team Shaq.
Farther out, and that makes a difference versus the Diesel. A more realistic way to slow Shaq down was to foul him.
So if Shaq had, decent passers, if he wanted to, decent shooters, he could easily do what Hakeem did, super easily.
There's the traditional method where he's in close, or the legendary Cashapp, where teams intentionally fouled him at the end of the quarter. It often felt like Shaq was playing on a Nerf hoop, and the downside of that was at the line, he shot a Nerf ball. I've never understood how deliberately fouling a 53% free throw shooter was a winning play. That would be great half-court offense back in those days. Although when Shaq was powering up next to the hoop, 53% was way better than the 75% or so he shot at the rim.
Risk management. When I talk about basketball and risk management, it's like Shaq, he invented it. If he's gonna get a dunk, basically every time he touches it, might as well go take your chances on one point per possession versus 2 or 1.5. Every time he touches, it's going to be a dunk or an and one, something like
because
that.
Of this, he put entire front lines into foul trouble, forcing playoff teams to keep unskilled bruising bigs on their bench just for 9 minutes against him. So Shaq's attack worked the entire game like few players ever have, but were the other elements enough to make him the best center ever?
Smack.
Birthday present. Shaquille O'Neal, who turns 27 tomorrow, not bad. That's it for the Thorn. I'm Lauren Sanchez. Back to you.
Part of the benefit of
Lauren Sanchez. I think that girl's this chick down here. I think she's married to Jeff Bezos. Or Jeff Bezos' girlfriend now.
The benefit of Shaq's positional sparring is that it led to quick hitting catch and shoot plays, or in his case, maybe I should say
like this. Shaq moving across. This is unstoppable. And when all the other players are moving, and you have Shaq on the move.
Part of the benefit of Shaq
right here. Okay, they're all moving, they're all cutting through. Fisher's running through, so he's occupying his defender. Okay, Fox is cutting up, and then you clear out the backside.
Two quick hitting catch and shoot plays, or in his case, maybe I should say catch and dunk plays. And by scoring immediately, he didn't take away many opportunities from teammates by monopolizing the ball. If Shaq wasn't in a position to catch and go, one card he could play was the repost, giving the ball up to find that superior position without dribbling. This was a natural bridge between his scoring and playmaking, where if he felt a double team in these spots, he quickly kicked it out and could repost. But if that didn't lead to deeper position, he'd play the same game again. He was quite patient in these situations, waiting for defense.
Shaq was a much better passer than Hakeem Olajuwon.
The direction the help came from to punish them. If the double dropped down from the top, Shaq surveyed and comfortably tossed it back out to a teammate. If it came from the opposite corner, right away he looked to that corner, and in general, he was really good at attacking the location of a double team. Allen Iverson doubles off a different Laker, and Shaq gashes it and then still cleans up the play himself with that rebound.
Shaq had only 2 people that can contain him. 1, himself, and 2, the referees. When the referees were not giving him the calls because he gets destroyed on every single play, that's the only people that could stop Shaq. Nobody else could stop Shaq.
His way through progressions, too. Here's a double from the top, but New Jersey shifts its defense to take away the basic kick out, so Shaq looks to the cutter, and that's picked up well, which leaves the skip pass to the opposite wing. Notice how he swivels his head when he catches an entry so he can see the action unfolding and find the optimal play. And his processing speed in these spots was quite strong. He spots the double before he lands here and then holds the defender with a no-look pass. Again, watch his head. Before the ball hits his hands, he's surveying the floor, so he knows the lane is open if his cutter has half a step and hooks.
Right here, if Shaq was really good, he could just quickly spin off of this leverage.
Except Robert Horry with perfect touch on a bounce pass.
But Shaq was a much better passer than Hakeem, a much underrated passer.
In the paint like this. He sends this to open space in the middle of the lane with a little hop and a soft touch. Shaq was right-hand dominant as a passer, treating the basketball like a dodgeball, and that led to some limitations or awkward deliveries at times. He would occasionally throw one too hot or miss his target like this, although he also had some brilliant deliveries too. This looks like a skip pass, but it's a changeup that drops perfectly to a cutter. And on this play, he sees Iverson fall asleep, and those giant hands make this touch pass an easy bucket. Some speedy neurological processing also helped him audible at times. He's flowing into a catch and shoot here, but switches to a pass at the last second after spotting a double. And as Coach Bird can attest to, that is just too good. For my money, Shaq is the best low post passer among the great 90s centers, but there were some holes in his vision. He could miss openings on the opposite block. He threads it once he sees Horace Grant, but a great pass arrives 2 seconds earlier. Here's that same action again over Shaq's left shoulder, and he's blind to it. And this is a connection that excellent post passers make most of the time. Similarly, he could also miss the baseline cut from the same side of the court. And I think this is the trade-off of conditioning himself.
It's very hard to tell whether or not a player misses the pass or they omit passing. Sometimes,
left shoulder,
like right here. Okay, does he see it or does he not see it? Does he want to actually give it to this guy? You have to ask these guys. I always ask in practice, and players, they think that they're in trouble, but I have to understand whether or not they can see the pass or the opening or not, or they decide not to pass it. And I have to decide whether that was a good decision or not. Like if I design a play or offense is set with this guy, I don't know who this is, 45. If he can't catch this ball and score on this side, it's a terrible pass because he's just going to get trapped on this side. So I might fake a pass to him and then I'll give it to the easier or this guy. So it's like KYP, know your personnel. And Shaq has shown plenty of ability to find the open man and make the right play So it's kind of hard to tell whether or not, this was him not seeing it or not wanting to throw it. There's a big difference.
Into it, and this is a connection that excellent post passers make most of the time. Similarly, he could also miss the baseline cut from the same side of the court, and I think this is the trade-off.
So here, is this like, does this guy really want that? That's Brian Shaw. Does he really want Brian Shaw there, or is he just waiting for Brian Shaw to get out the way and clear out the baseline so Shaq can go one-on-one? There's a big difference. It's like clear out.
And I think this is the trade-off.
Right? Do you actually want to give it to Brian Shaw down there? Can Brian Shaw catch this and make a reverse layup with whoever that is and David Robinson?
Conditioning himself to spot the double team instead of holistically reading the floor. He misses the easy layup here, but is quick to hit a spot-up shooter. Since he won't floor,
again,
he misses
this cut will always be there, right?
But it's quick to hit a spot-up.
Is it really open? Can Ron Harper make a reverse layup with Sabonis, all these guys knowing that it's back there? Or is that a better decision? Rick Fox wide open three.
Since he was
in today's game, that three is going to be more valued than that backdoor cut, because that three counts as three, and that backdoor cut is not a guaranteed two.
It's quick to react to doubles. His teammates had some wide open threes. This is similar to what we saw last episode with the Kings Rockets, where
this is the exact same thing with Jokic, man. You surround him with some dudes, and if they hit threes, they're going to be pretty goddamn hard to stop.
Surrounding him with capable shooters, punished double teams, and dotting the arc with
Fisher, Fox, they all made a living off of Shaq.
Outside of a white-hot playoff run in 2001, those Lakers were never really a good three-point shooting team, but they had enough respectable shooters on the court to space the floor and keep defenses honest, which allowed a more defensively slanted supporting cast to play off Shaq while maintaining those offensive heights.
Keeping a defense honest is different than scaring the crap out of defense. Putting Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry. Poof.
As a result, LA's attacks were very good in the regular season and all-time good in the playoffs, able to maintain their regular season efficiency against those super stingy playoff defenses of that era, because almost no one had a way to slow down these Shaq-centric offenses. With Shaq on the bench, the Lakers' playoff offensive rating dropped by nearly 12 points during those three-peat runs to about 98 points per 100. Even a young Kobe Bryant couldn't carry that kind of roster with a replacement-level center subbed in for Shaq. Although Froby was a great fit next to O'Neal,
Froby,
offensive wing who could play make and generate his own shots. With Shaq probing for position, teams were less likely to throw defensive attention toward Kobe, who already had a bevy of isolation scoring moves to unleash, and because of Shaquille's off-ball activity, he didn't take away many touches from Bryant. O'Neal fit incredibly well next to penetrators like this because his defenders were so reluctant to leave him near the hoop, and this gave Kobe a little more airspace when attacking the cup. When bigs were forced to help, it freed up Shaq on the glass for cleanup duty. What a ridiculous duo they were. I also think there was a strong fit on defense, especially
Kobe's like, you remember Kobe saying, I don't care, go get my rebound. If you want the ball, go get my rebound. That's what I'm talking about, the two alphas, man. I ain't passing to you.
Shaq could be statuesque at times, not venturing far from the lane and often dropping deep on pick and rolls. And Kobe's ability to chase ball handlers over screens and at times hound guards at the point of attack shored up O'Neal's stationary defense. And the Diesel could be stuck in neutral for entire possessions. He stretched that 3-second rule on both ends. And despite Kobe's ball denial on Iverson here, they still give up an open jumper. There were a bunch of reasons why Shaq just camped out in the key a lot. First, his defensive strength was protecting the rim, especially against smaller wings who challenged his massive frame and his giant reach. And when he was loaded up, and in position, especially against
look, that dude misses. They get an offensive rebound. He waits for it, and he still smacks it.
Giant reach. And
Sean Marion.
And in position to contest, he could get to shots like this quickly. Second, he was conserving energy. It takes a lot to move 340 pounds around the court, and Shaquille was asked to play 43 minutes per game in the playoffs at his peak, and in his condition, he lacked the motor to do that while stepping out to the perimeter on defense.
Conserving energy. That's a great one.
Or even sitting down in the stance.
That's a great realization there.
There were a number of instances where he was slow getting back in transition, jogging down the court at a leisurely pace, and in some instances, he never really made it back into the play. And in their playoff matchups, the Kings had some success with him until fatigue kicked in. Also, Shaq parked himself in the paint because his change of direction wasn't swift enough to make recovering easy. And
when I talk about agility and stuff like that, how quickly you move on defense is more an indicator of how well you what your agility is like, because offensive moves can be rehearsed. Defense agility is different. That's why I say Hakeem is one of the most or was a much better athlete than Shaq.
He wasn't fast enough to help down from the outside like the last two centers in this series. On offense, he could dictate where all that mass went, but having to react on defense wasn't as easy. He's not agile enough to toggle around here smoothly and kind of bear hugs his man and ends up on the wrong side of the play. All this was compounded by inconsistent awareness, where on some plays he was a bit slow to read potential threats, and on others he was sort of asleep at the wheel with a play unfolding in front of him. This shows up when we look at how opposing teams shot at the rim when O'Neal was on the court. Opponents shot slightly worse than average in 2000 and at exactly average in 2001, which is a far cry from elite defensive big men like the Spurs Twin Towers or the Georgetown centers.
Shaq. Selective defense.
On the plus side,
mostly verbal defense.
Teams didn't take too many of these high percentage shots in the restricted area against O'Neal, probably due to his intimidation. In other words, there was some benefit to him lingering in the lane.
Oh, hell yeah. And just a presence like that is gigantic intimidation.
Many opponents didn't want to challenge Shaq's shot blocking or take the physical punishment he could dish out on hard fouls.
They call those BDs, business decisions.
On occasion, he would shift into fifth gear and string together really active defensive possessions, leaving the paint, moving his feet.
Remember, not every foul is created equally. Like a little reach foul on the perimeter or coming in trying to dunk on Shaq and getting nailed to the floor. They call them playoff fouls. Like one foul is not one foul, man. One foul might deter you for the whole goddamn series.
And giving us a glimpse at what his defense would have looked like with a high rep motor. Of course, most of the time he roamed around the lane like a grazing elephant, so teams with jump shooting big men would punish him on the perimeter.
Grazing
Shaq did
elephant.
not want to switch onto wings and was reluctant to come out on them. Here, LA sends extra help and it leads to a clean three, and teams would go at him in pick and roll, leaving his teammates on an island against the screener and ball handler, and Shaq's reluctance to venture out helped Allen Iverson in his famous 2001 outburst, and the ultimate example of this was Mike Bibby's pull-up jumper parade in the 2002 Western Finals that nearly unseated the Lakers. This also made it really easy for big men to pick and pop their way into wide open jumpers. So when teams started torching LA like this, they would bring Shaq up to the level of the screen where he could contest pull-ups. This was actually a major tactical adjustment in that big Game 7 comeback in 2000 against Portland, and there's one of those high-energy defensive possessions. Note that most of these shots then were long twos because there weren't many pull-up three practitioners in the league at that point. In 2000, the Lakers posted a 103 defensive rating without Shaq on the court.
Peja, super good shooter.
With him, they were about 2 points better, and more complex adjustments for teammates and opponent quality. View him as a solid positive on defense in those seasons, although not a star.
Prime Shaq right here.
Similar story looking at his missed games, the same method we used back in episode 2, where in 25 contests as the only starter missing, LA was almost a 500 team. But when Shaq returned to the lineup, they played at a 62-win pace. Most of that change was on offense. Equally as impressive is how the Lakers fared without Kobe in those years. In 29 games, where he was the only starter missing, LA played at a 54-win pace with an offense nearly 3 points ahead of the league. And that's without a playmaker replacing Bryant, a testament to Shaq's offensive floor raising with a 3-and-D roster. Similarly, one-number impact metrics rank him among the all-time greats, primarily because of his offensive value. To me, there's enough value from that paint protection for him to be a decently positive defender. He was even somewhat effective as a man defender during those years, just based on his size and sheer athleticism, and the overall nature of his offense, which was off-ball, quick hitting,
scoring rate, 99th percentile.
So difficult to slow down, made him unique among big men in NBA history, and gives him a strong argument as the most dominant big man ever.
Not a strong argument. There is no argument.
NBA history.
The most dominant for sure. 99th. Spacing first, that means, I don't know what that means. That means he has terrible spacing. Passer rating, underrated. All-time level, interior scoring, good post passer to cutters and three-point shooters, off-ball game, rebounding and paint movement, gravity, fit well with wings, all-time foul, draw rate, no outside game whatsoever. High-level shot blocker, winning position and paint size. Low motor. This is the biggest knock on Shaq. Low motor. Super stationary in paint, not quick to help, easy to stretch and pick and roll or with jump shooting big man. Okay, the biggest knock I can make on Shaq is low motor, and that's the nice way to say it. Lazy is the other way to say it. But if I want to frame Shaq in a great way, the most dominant people, animals, lions, king of the jungle, most of the goddamn time they're sleeping. They are lazy and they don't do anything. But when they go hunt, they go kill, and they're king of the jungle for whatever reason. Like if you're the most dominant guy, you're going to be lazy, because when you're the alpha, people have to challenge you, and most of the time people don't challenge you. You win it before it's even fought. So Shaq won every friggin' battle mentally, because everybody knew that you couldn't compete against Shaq. And so when they would send double, triple, quadruple teams against Shaq to foul him, like I said, the only people that could stop him was Shaq, when he was like, you know what, I'm tired today, I'm not fighting back today, or I'm only going to give half effort. That's the only time other teams stood a chance. And then the other time is when you have a third party, a referee, not calling fouls, calling offensive fouls, not calling, every little slap that he gets hit on the arm every time he catches the ball from the guards. They're only calling, I don't know, like flagrant fouls as regular personal fouls against Shaq. So that's the only way you could stop him. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's just basketball. I was talking to a parent just recently, and he's telling me about how his kid is like a foot taller than the other kids. And if you have a kid that is more physical in nature or taller in nature than other kids, the tall kid is not going to use his dominance because of societal norms. Oh, be gentle, soft, da 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 da. In everyday life, you're going to get by kind of like complying and being, a nice kid. But when it comes to sports like basketball, they're like wondering why, like, oh, my kid's so big, and why doesn't he just run over these other kids? Why isn't he as aggressive as these stupid other little guards just coming in and stealing the ball from him? And it's because all the other inputs in his life has told him to be nice, share, play with your friends and stuff like that. But when it comes into a sports setting, you want him to like destroy and dominate. This kid doesn't know how to use his size, and that mentality isn't there yet, because he doesn't. It's like confusing. The inputs are confusing. So in basketball, you can only bully like just enough to score. And if you're bigger than anybody, you understand this. If you're smaller, you also understand this, but from the other side, like, oh my God, if I really, try to slap this guy's going to beat the shit out of me. And that's only kind of innate in men, and that doesn't show up in women. So it's a little bit differently, because guys, if you guys kind of walk next to somebody and you bump them and you size them up, like, okay, if anything goes down, we're going to have to fight. Girls don't have this. And in the streets, or I always call it like law of the jungle. In the jungle, you're going to fight. And you're going to fight until you figure out who wins. You don't fight until the death. You just need to fight long enough to figure out, okay, this guy's stronger than me, or, oh, this guy's a better fighter than me, like, to win. But with a referee who judges and is, naturally going to be more beta, they're going to err on the side of let's let the game play, or, oh, he's being too physical, or it's an offensive foul. So there's this whole psychological aspect to sports, especially in basketball, when there's a referee doing these things. Just have a football player play basketball, and you'll know what I mean. You're going to be like, whoa, this football player is way too effing physical. But all right, man, that's enough of a rant of dominance, alpha, Shaq. There's no question in my mind, Shaq is the most dominant dude ever. One, because of his physicality, and two, because of his mentality of I could kill you at any moment. And everybody knew that. Ask anybody that had a guard. And yeah, Shaq, undisputed. Great episode. Great episode. Until next time, guys, take 40 minutes, 24 seconds, or 1% of your day to get better. Peace.